Hi, I'm Davy. I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Wrestling, where I review wrestling and related things, all from the perspective of a fan, not an insider. So recently, as of this filming, WWE has come out with 2 new tag team championships. They finally got rid of the Raw and SmackDown championships in favor of bringing back the World and WWE tag team championships with brand new designs that are distinct from one another, and one of them a throwback. So I figured it's time to do an updated list, ranking WWE's tag team championships. And I'm going all the way back to when it was the WWWF. And it's going to encompass 15 different championships, starting from the worst all the way to my favorite. In at number 15, in my opinion, the worst was actually the one that started it. The original WWWF Tag Team Championship. There's not a lot of good pictures of this championship. The best ones you can find are on Luke Graham and Tarzan Tyler. But even they're not great pictures. But still, enough to where you can see that they didn't have any side plates. They just had that one oddly shaped front plate. Granted, kind of have to give it to the fact that back then belt making was a lot different than it is now. Now these wrestling leagues, they have several companies they can go to and commission to make them a championship, an original championship. Heck, you can go get yourself an original championship if you go on the internet. Back then, apparently they were all made by wrestlers, and it was just them basically doing what they could in their garages with sheet metal. But I didn't like this one. In at number 14, though, the very first version of the WWF Women's Tag Team Championships. They weren't around for very long, thank God, because they were ridiculously ugly. They had the red strap, which I'm not usually a fan of. Again, they had no side plates. And I will say this, I remember being a kid and wondering what a championship would look like without side plates. Would that look better? And it was the ECW Television Championship that made me go, no, it doesn't look better. It looks worse. I can't think of any championship I've ever liked that doesn't have side plates. They at least need one on each side. Because I will say this, the main plate, it's not a great design, but it's not terrible. But it's terrible considering that it's sitting there all by itself. Granted, this championship never had a chance of lasting because back then they really didn't take women's wrestling seriously anyway. Which brings us to number 13, what was called the WWE World Tag Team Championship. Back in the first time that Raw had the World Tag Team Championships and SmackDown had the WWE Tag Team Championships, and they unified them, made them one set of Tag Team Championships, and they finally gave us one set of belts instead of each tag team walking around with 4 of them. This is what they gave us, and we all looked at them and said, what the hell is your problem? I can't think of anybody who liked these. These bronze penny-looking championships. They were freaking god-awful. They were terrible. First of all, I don't know why they decided to use bronze plates instead of gold plating or even nickel. But, ew. The Spartan helmets I get because at the time the movie 300 had been out for a couple of years and was really popular maybe. That was their inspiration, but it just didn't work. Maybe it would have worked if they didn't put it on such an oval plate, but there's nothing redeeming about these championships. I will say in my lifetime, being a wrestling fan, the worst I'd ever seen. Which brings us to number 12, the SmackDown Championships. After a while of those god-awful WWE World Tag Team Championships, they split the brands again. The awful penny championships were on Raw, so SmackDown needed something. So they gave us the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, which was basically the exact same design, but nickel plating and on a blue strap. Which I remember seeing and going like, well, I guess the nickels look better than the pennies, but it still looks awful. And they kept them for so long. Despite the fact that, again, other than my little kids, I've never met anybody who actually liked these. Which brings us to number 11, the Raw Tag Team Championships. Eventually, they decided, well, since SmackDown has Tag Team Championships that reflect SmackDown because they're blue, we gotta have some red ones. And I will say the red worked a little better in my opinion, but still awful. I am so beyond happy that they have finally gotten rid of these. In fact, when they unified these, I was sitting here for like over a year going like, okay, are you going to give us a new belt already? Because these freaking suck. In at number 10, the WWWF Tag Team Championships version 3. Most famously worn by Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, who were the first African-American tag team champions. And ultimately, looking back, seeing these championships, I don't hate them, but they're not great. They were definitely better than the originals, but they weren't the best either. They were 7-plate belts, very square. The main plate, kind of an octagon. Wasn't much to them. But I will say for the time that they came out, they were probably very much liked because just wasn't really a lot of good belts back then. Which brings us to the next one, the WWWF Tag Team Championships version 2. Which looked very, very similar to what we now call the Bruno Sammartino Championship. The one that he made famous. He held for a long time. Eventually was won by Billy Graham, who turned it blue. I guess for a while they were just wanting it to look uniform, which I can be a fan of. That's not always a bad thing. And I will say in this case, I like these championships. I will say of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation era, these were the best ones they had. But something that would kind of hurt that for me is they weren't unique at all. And I will say this, even now, they do that with the women's championships and men's championships in WWE, where they look pretty much exactly the same, except they're white straps instead of black straps. I don't like that. I don't like when there's nothing unique about it. It's hard to get excited about a championship that looks exactly the same as another one. Bringing us to number 8, the WWE Tag Team Championship, the first version. The first one they came out with after they first split Raw and SmackDown as 2 separate brands. Raw had the World Tag Team Championships because they also had the World Heavyweight Championship. SmackDown had the WWE Tag Team Championships because they also had the WWE Championship. It made sense, but I didn't really care much for these. They were okay, but kind of a letdown because when they brought them out, Raw got basically a completely original design, and these were basically a downgraded version of one that I really loved. The main plate was a very similar design. The side plates not really, they were just kind of their own, more squarish. And not to mention on the plates themselves, I don't mind some color, but in my opinion, in this case, too much. Not to mention I say downgrade because these were also significantly smaller than the ones that they replaced and got their design based off of. I didn't think they looked really good on anybody. And at number 7, the very first version of the WWF Tag Team Championships. When Vince McMahon got the company, dropped the wide in the name and just called it the World Wrestling Federation, this was the first official WWF Tag Team Championships. Which I will say, I don't hate, I don't love either. It's basically the exact same shape, design as the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Which, knowing what I know about Vince McMahon, probably was a dig at them. But difference is that one had a little bit more color in the right places. The gold popped a little bit more. Not to mention the flags and stuff that were on the NWA one. It just made it look a lot better. But they weren't bad. Definitely better than what they had replaced. In at number 6, the second and current version of the Women's Tag Team Championships. I've actually been a fan of these for quite a while, since they came out. I like the design. I just don't think the concept's working. I've talked about that many times. I think it really is time for WWE to get rid of the Women's Tag Team Championships and maybe just give them a mid-card championship. I just don't think they have a strong enough women's roster to facilitate a women's tag division, and it's never been that interesting. But the belts themselves, when I first saw them, really liked them, especially because I was so scared that they were going to come out with a Women's Tag Team Championship that looked exactly like the Men's Tag Team Championships, but with a white strap. No, they gave them their own design, and it worked. A lot of people have been critical about them, but they work. They're not fantastic, but they're pretty good. I like them. If they had, at the time, gotten rid of the men's championships and replaced them with this design, but a black strap, I would have been like, cool. And at number 5, we finally get into one of the brand new ones. The current version of the World Tag Team Championships. When I first saw these, my initial reaction was like, they're way better than what they replaced. But as a few weeks have gone on, I'm not crazy about them, but I like them. My one flaw to them, in my opinion, is the main plate being such a big plate with a nickel background, and then the design in gold put right on there. It kind of looks like somebody took a platter and put something on it. But again, they are nice. I like that they're dual plated, nickel and gold. I like that they are definitely bigger than what they replaced. I like that they got rid of the Spartan helmet design that had been around for way, way too long. Then again, 5 minutes after they debuted was way, way, way too long. These are actually some really nice tag team championships. The ones that are currently on Raw, where again, it makes sense. Raw is the World Heavyweight Championship, the Women's World Championship, the World Tag Team Championship. It makes sense. I like it. And also, I'm not going to lie, it definitely gets points just for simply getting rid of those god-awful titles that have been around since, I believe, 2012. Which brings us to number 4. The other ones that just debuted. The current version of the WWE Tag Team Championships. I love these. They're not my favorite, but I love them. I think it works so well. I would say it could probably use a little bit of color on the plates, but even still, with the gold and black backing, it still looks really nice. I love the throwback design to the classic tag team championships that most of my generation grew up with, but still very distinctly its own. I also like that, unlike the first time they did that, they didn't make them so much smaller. These aren't that small. Ultimately, just very happy with these. I would honestly say right now in the wrestling business, all the currently active tag team championships, these are easily my favorite right now. Bringing us to number 3, the first version of the World Tag Team Championships. When they first split Raw and SmackDown in the early 2000s, and Raw got the World Tag Team Championships, I absolutely loved these designs. They were brand new, they were original, they looked good. They were simple, but sometimes simple works. I've talked about how the SmackDown Tag Team Championships they had at the time were too small. These were pretty much like that. They were pretty small, but for some reason, that worked too. I remember talking to somebody once about he thought they would have been better if they had just been bigger. I don't know if that would have worked in this case. Sometimes it really just depends on the design itself. Most of the time I would say, yeah, let's give them something bigger, something that doesn't look too small around a big, huge guy's waist. But in this case, I don't know. I liked these ones very much. Can't think of a time that I didn't like how they looked on somebody's waist. They looked really good. These were beautiful. Which brings us to number 2. Second version of the WWE Tag Team Championships. There's not a whole lot of difference between this and the next one. But this one, it was beautiful. I like the design. But this one had the gold plating trimmed around the nickel plating. And normally I love that. And in this case, I did love it. I remember seeing it when I was a kid and really liking these titles. But later seeing a pure gold version of it, I just felt like that worked a little bit better than the dual plated. Which brings us to number 1. My favorite of WWE's Tag Team Championships of all time, the WWF Tag Team Championships, the ones that would later transition into the Attitude Era for a while. They were much better in my opinion, simply for being all gold versus the nickel and gold. Dual plating I usually love better, just not in this case. I think the design worked as an all gold plate. I always have loved how its design seems very rugged, almost a little Western if you will, yet still works on anybody who has them. I've often said that the most important thing about a championship is that it looks good on the champion who holds it. Nobody had these championships and didn't look good with them. I will say there probably is a little bit bias in there because these were the ones I grew up with the most. These are probably the first ones I remember. But I don't know, because there are times that I look back and think, you know what, there was better versions of this title. There were better versions of that title from the ones I originally remember, but I don't think WWE's ever done better than this. But I will say that's one reason I love their current WWE Tag Team Championships, is they are a throwback, but their own, to this one. But would I say they look better than this one? No. These were the absolute most gorgeous tag team championships they ever had. So there you have it. That's my ranking of WWE's tag team championships throughout the ages. All the way back to when they were the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. I hope you guys enjoyed these rankings, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and leave a comment I can respond to in my next comment corner. Tell me if you agree with my rankings. Tell me if you disagree with my rankings. Tell me your favorite and least favorite tag team championship that WWE ever had. Love you guys.